someplace else. I just want to give Tamara a shot in here before we get started.
Those files that you send me are perfect.
Oh, good. Okay.
So much better than what I was doing.
Good.
And the
He
accuracy.
was telling me what he's doing. He's like, are you sending a CSV file now to him or something?
Yeah, it's just
I was like, he's like, I'm typing it from here. I was like, oh my goodness. Ay, ay, ay. That's a lot of work. Just give her a quick text before we start. Oh, I'm on my way. I may be a few minutes late tomorrow.
There she is.
I have a copy.
Hey,
Hi.
how are you?
Hi, Tamara.
Saved you a seat right next to Dr. Rob.
Oh,
And he's sick.
And you,
maybe I didn't better off sitting
wasn't gonna
next to
say
him
that,
than across.
Yeah, I'm going to go up on stage and nobody's going to follow me.
Come on down here.
Look, everybody keeps going like this.
Just don't,
You should move to
no,
that
just
table.
don't touch anything I touch. That's how you pass colds. You touch.
How about when we put your chair like,
I have a hanky. I'll sneeze into my hanky.
all right, so it looks like we got all the board members here, so we might as well go ahead and get started because I don't know how much time we're going to have at the end of this. For those people that are out in the public, can I just get your names so I can put them into the minutes?
You want me to send around the sheet? Just-
Yeah, actually, do you have an extra sheet of paper?
Sure.
We can send around?
I do.
Okay. So we're just going to want these quick.
Jeez.
If you guys can put your name and address on there so we know who you are for the minutes.
You might need to correct my name.
Did I do it again?
I fixed it on mine.
Sorry, wait a minute. I did that. I spelled it Daniel.
See, I spell Danielle Boone.
That's why Danielle came to the school district.
I'm like, that's not right.
No, but we're spelling it all wrong. I've said like, I don't know how many things to her where I've spelled
She's
her.
Danielle Boone.
Unbelievable.
My daughter's Justine, and she's been Justin for like 15 years. Everybody calls her Justin. It's like,
And I've tried to be better with it, so my fault. When I'm in a hurry sometimes.
That's all right.
All right, so let's see. This meeting gets started a little after 6, and all right. So the first, I'm actually going to jump around a little bit on the agenda. We're going to put referendum a little bit later. I think I just want to kind of get through the stuff that you guys need us to address in terms of the business office. So the first thing on there was a 60-month copier proposal. Yep.
Can you all hear? Feel free to move your chairs.
Yeah, you guys can sit over here or something if you want to. At least be in a comfortable chair. If you want.
Okay, basically Julie and I are bringing this to your attention to hopefully go to the full board. As of July 1, our copy releases are up. We went out to 3 different vendors and believe that we have some pretty competitive pricing for what they're proposing now for cost per copies compared to what our current is. Basically, your first column is showing what our current copier costs are, cost per copy, annual leases, and the machines that we currently have. The next 3 columns are the vendors that we solicited some quotes from. Actually, if you just want to jump to the cost savings from the current contract, you see that the 2 vendors are very close. Edwards Business would be a $39,000 savings, and Fraser would be $41,000. The 3rd vendor is kind of out because it's actually going to cost more. Julie and I actually would like to recommend Edwards. I do realize that they are approximately $1,800 more than Fraser. However, Edwards is our current vendor. In my tenure here, which is about a year and a half, I've never had any problems or complaints about copiers. Now, Julie can speak prior. I believe we did have Fraser here at one time.
Yes, and we had issues. We had trouble with service calls where it would take them sometimes a day and a half, sometimes an additional phone call before we got them in to make the repair. And with the amount of copies we make, we just can't afford the downtime. And there were occasions where they would come, they would make a repair, and it wouldn't really be repaired and would be calling them back. Edwards they do an excellent job in keeping everything up and running.
And also the machines that Edwards is proposing here are actually newer machines. They're like 2009 models, where Frazier's are, I believe, 2007.
Also, Konica Minolta seemed to be working much better for us. Sharps were an issue.
Are you permitted to tell them that you need a little bit more? That they're a little bit higher, and if they can come down $1,800?
Well,
They've got the
I
business.
have, and the difference between theirs is actually Edwards is including the shipping back of the old machines, where Frazier is not, so that would be an out-of-pocket. Edwards is telling me it could be upwards of $10,000, $20,000 to
If
send.
something breaks,
No, for the old machine.
copiers that we have, the 16, 17 in our fleet that we would be sending back, we would be
there you go.
responsible
That's
for the
probably-
shipping.
That's the
that's it
difference.
right there.
That is
Yeah,
the difference.
that
That's
is
what-
really the difference.
And believe it or not, we did go back to Edwards, and he really came down in the cost per copy.
It looks that way.
So we've been we kept going back at them, trying to get,
Looks that way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see an issue with it. I mean, if they're providing good service and if you're taking that into consideration, looks like it's a better deal. Tamara, do you have any thoughts? I'm just wondering why we're paying so much, why they didn't give us a break before, but, you know, it is what it is.
It is what it is, right?
Yeah,
I know, I think,
Nothing in a little competition doesn't
Right.
yeah.
hurt.
yeah.
We got a lot of copiers.
A lot of copies.
We're working on that too, so.
Yeah, and with Edwards, actually, he's.
I've been involved in 5 school districts in my illustrious career, and every place, copying's an issue. Trust me.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Edwards had also come in to present to Julie, myself, and Mike Jacobs for a print management. And they're looking, if they get our service, obviously, to help us look at pushing more of the copies to the copiers, because it's cheaper than if we go to the Dells and the HP printers that we have.
yeah,
So they're
yeah.
looking at a print.
Yeah.
Well, I don't understand why we don't do that.
It's just been,
Change of culture.
it is, it's a change of
It's
culture.
a culture change.
I mean, typically what you do is you put it in a central location, and then you
Right,
print there, and people
right.
just go pick up their stuff.
It's,
Yeah, they don't think of it as,
I mean, like, I've noticed that where I do it, but the other people that I work with are
I know.
It's a convenience issue, I
generations
think.
away, and they're still used to just printing and picking it up. I know that the copier's faster and cheaper, so anytime I have if it's one page, I might print on my desk, but if it's,
No, yeah, I print all my
you know, I
stuff.
print everything, and I think it's just kind of the different generations and the
Well,
different
not only that, but
cultures.
you can set it up as a default, as that's
Well,
your
yeah.
default
And I think
copy of
that's
everything.
That's part of this. It
print
will, if you
management.
try to do a large job on your personal printer, it's going to tell you, no, you have to send it to the copier.
But that's like another part of this. That's the part that Mike's looking into.
So he's
where
trying
we're-
to do that.
And he
Yeah,
was
she-
involved in this process too, of the copiers.
yeah. I mean, I'm sure he can take into consideration future purchases of printers and avoid it and just direct people to these copiers. So we
Yeah,
can
absolutely.
slowly, you know, at
Those
least
print cartridges
move
on those
move
Dells,
folks
I mean,
over.
They're ungodly
Yes.
expensive.
Yeah, that's,
So
and
if the committee's okay with it.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I think
Yeah.
the only issue I have, I passed this around to the board, like last year or something like that, and I'll dig it up again. There was a, thing on 60 Minutes where they were talking about
Oh, yeah.
copiers.
And they make
have
sure that
memory.
they-
And so what happens is when you scan or make copies, it actually records that in the hard drive of the machine, and people don't wipe those things clean.
they do.
So,
We checked with them on
all
that.
right,
They
we
do.
want to make sure that that is something that, because obviously it's
Yes.
sensitive information.
I
that gets
think
copied.
we had actually talked to them, or, I don't know, Mike, or along with, somehow I was involved, and yes, they do. We had checked on that.
So I guess I don't know, with tonight being committee of the whole, can this be new business to try to
Yeah,
get
we'll
this
bring it
approved
up.
by the end of the
Yep.
month, if that's okay with everyone?
Usually what we do is bring it up as a report of the Finance Committee.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'll, make sure
You
we
can-
bring it up in the thing, so. This is a recommendation here. Okay, all right, a little bit harder subject to talk about here. Formulating a fund balance policy.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, honestly, how much we want to go into this tonight, because I was just on the phone with our auditor, Friday. And she actually said her firm is coming up with their own draft of a proposal. This is the draft I got from PSBA. So I don't know if you guys want to take it, look at it, and wait till I bring kind of their combined model back, and we can look at everything, or you tell me.
Essentially, if I read the auditor's report appropriately, what they're saying is GASBA 54 has come out with some new requirement that requires us to define unassigned, assigned, committed, and unrestricted
yeah.
or uncommitted funds as part of our general balance, general fund balance. And so then we have to decide what the appropriate level of unrestricted fund balance is to be, and the circumstances in which the fund balance can be spent down, and the policy for replenishing deficiencies, and who has the authority to assign or commit fund balance. Those are the four issues that we have to address.
And they're also outlined in the policy there.
Those are outlined
with
here, too.
blankets where we can do a percentage, we can do a dollar amount. They give you there what the new classifications are, the non-spendable, which we probably won't have in the district, restricted, which would be like litigations or things that we know we would have to
Put the money aside.
put the money aside. Committed are, for example, had the district maybe put money aside for PESers, that could have been a committed example.
So with these categories, the only category that matters when it comes to, not that we have the problem now, but when it comes to the percentage of money you can have based on your overall, is just the unassigned portion, is that correct?
I think it's a combination
Well,
of assigned and
You're thinking about our
unassigned.
overall fund balance.
Yes. Right.
So our overall fund balance is
Capped at
the-
8%.
Capped at 8% of whatever our budget is.
But I think that's only
So we-
unassigned.
I thought that
That's
was.
unassigned,
I think it's
right.
all right, yeah.
Right, so these other, you could have more dollars in there if they're committed or,
Yes, or assigned,
whatever.
or,
Yeah, it
yes.
can be
So the
10
only
or
thing that-
50.
But then they could only
Unassigned.
flow out of that account to do the assigned purpose.
correct, right.
You couldn't say, well, we lost that problem, so now we want to put this money back over here.
Well, you can, for
You
assigned,
can.
for assigned, you can.
Oh, you can.
For assigned, you can assign it somewhere, and if you don't need it, then you can go back and unassign it.
What if it
And-
exceeds your 8%?
Well, then you have
To
a
use
problem.
it.
You just assign it to something.
Not that that's a problem right
Yeah,
now,
you
so I
would
guess
Just
that's a
assign
moot
it,
thing.
it's going to go toward this bill that we're going to pay
Right.
in July of the following year or something.
True.
Basically, assigned is where,
Yeah, that's
if
Shows
you guys are gonna be
revenue.
using fund balance, we designate part of the fund balance, like last year, we designated 750.
50,
That would be assigned,
right. got it.
and then the rest of it is unassigned in that example. So it's really what you guys would suggest to the board to be that percentage, and like Andrew said, how we would replace it, or, when it gets to what percentage, or,
What happens if we're in a scenario that we may be looking at in terms where we exhaust it?
you will have this policy in place, but you will try to get back to it as soon as you can, and.
So it's
I
not a
mean,
policy that handcuffs you.
Well, I mean, it does say here that you have to, the circumstances in which unrestricted fund balances can be spent down. So we could talk about, look, if we're having a budget shortfall,
Right.
then you have the option of spending down your fund balance. I've noticed here in the PASBA one, it says the total fund balance consisting of committed, assigned, unassigned may exceed X percent. And if the unassigned balance falls below the threshold of a certain level, then we'll pursue variations of increasing revenues and decreasing expenditures, or a combination of both. So that's essentially cost cuts and tax increases, until we get back to a certain level.
What are we trying to accomplish? Are we trying to adopt a policy, or are we trying to figure out best practices?
We need to adopt a policy according to our auditor report. Because of
Okay.
GASB 54, we actually
I
have
think it's a
to
little bit of
have.
both of what you're suggesting, Frank.
We never per se had a fund balance policy. We kind of went by what, I think it's Act,
The,
I don't remember what the Act
Part of
is.
Act 1, isn't it? Where we talk about
Not
the
for fund
inadequate-
balance.
No.
Act
I want to say
72?
Act 80, but I don't think that's right.
72?
No, that's for taxes. Where, you know,
Sad you've got that memorized.
I know, where if your expenditures are a certain amount, what ours are, our fund balance can't be more than 8%. Now, that wasn't a policy per se. Now they're saying your district needs to
You
have a
need one.
policy
I got
on
it.
file.
I understand.
Right. So, all right, so we got to think about this one for a little bit. I mean, it's one thing to use percentages. I mean, the other thing we can do is use actual dollar figures.
Absolutely.
Because we do know we need working capital of at least 2 million at this stage of the game.
I know Walt had said at one of our other finance meetings about can we just do percentages, and this one allows for it, but we can do whatever the
Okay.
consensus
Not to
is.
get off topic,
Yeah.
but real quick, you just mentioned, or you threw out that number, 2 million, I think it was 2.1 or something this year, in July, August, that time frame. All right, are we still at that number for this coming year? Or has it
Yeah,
gone
because
up?
our debt payments are still, nothing was changed with our debt payments
so-
and whatnot.
It hasn't gone up, you don't think
No.
it's going to be, okay.
I don't, unfortunately, think it's going to go up.
Does that change next year? I remember some of our debt payments change from one year. Not a lot, but at this point, you know, $50,000 or $100,000 one way or the other can be.
Don't
My
they start
recollection was
increasing
I can
all
a
check.
couple of them start to increase,
I think they do. I
like by
think
50 grand a year.
it's
or
not
something like
much.
that,
I mean-
for a couple of years, and then it starts to go back down again. So we have a
Yeah.
little bit of a bubble, and then it comes back down. I can't remember what the exact amount was, though.
I'll check on those for July.
But I think you're right.
I think whatever we do here, we just want to make sure we have as much flexibility as possible in regards to the unassigned portion of this, just because we find ourselves in this position for next year and the year after, it may be a little while before we get where we need to be, and we don't want to put ourselves under the, you know, some sort of arbitrary number that forces us to start doing things that we don't want to do to get back to where we want to be.
Well, is an assigned, I mean, like, can you use an assigned as debt service? I mean, can it be as simple as that, as for an assigned fund balance? Or does it have to be like something?
My understanding was in here, there was something that excluded debt service. Let me
Okay.
just make sure I read
Because
this
you're always,
right.
you know, you're always going to be able, you can always throw a little more into that, and you know you're going to have it every year for the next 20 years or whatever it is.
So
But
the
that's-
first defining line is spendable versus non-expendable. And so non-expendable would include items such as inventory, prepaid expenditures, long-term receivables. It would also include legally restricted such as debt service funds, whereby a reserve balance is mandated by the trust indenture. And this just refers, what we're doing here is just referring to expendables, so it seems to exclude debt service from this. I think my impression is that we need to set the bar low.
Right,
Because we
I'm
can always
just-
exceed it.
Well, right, I'm just
Yeah.
thinking that, I mean, someday, in the not near future, when maybe you have some additional revenues,
Yeah.
maybe future, you know, I was saying future debt service would be something, it might not be a bad idea to throw a little bit in a kitty towards, so that when you have times like this,
Well, you know,
You're
one of the
not
things that I
using
actually proposed last year was our debt service, the timing of our debt service
Is
payments
off,
is
yeah.
off. And so, you know, if we had monies available and you can actually put that money in the prior year, then it's available, you know, for payment in that gap that we have, and therefore you don't have to have the working capital on hand to
Right.
make those payments. You just need to do it 1 year, and then you're ahead
of the game, yeah.
going forward.
So I don't think we'll have to
No,
worry
we
about it
discussed
for a
that
while.
last year, right?
We
It's-
did,
It's not
but-
that simple to change that.
No, we
Not
need
change
an
the
extra
date,
$2 million on
But you
hand.
could,
Oh.
but you could take the money and put it aside, you know, you
Right.
can't change the payment date, but you could save it and prepay it
You
early
prepay
kind
it,
of
I
thing.
got you.
Yeah.
I got you.
Right.
You know,
And
like paying your January mortgage in December to get the
The interest
But
rate.
yeah.
Right, right. Okay, so, all right, I'm hearing we're gonna probably just read this policy, and then you guys want to think about some sort of ideas that you have. And bring it
Sure.
back to
When
the
did,
table.
when did you say you thought the auditor would have their draft?
She said they were coming out with it, and they actually were going to start holding meetings with their clients for it next month. So the only thing I know is we have to have it approved by June. And how many reads and whatnot for policies do we?
First, second.
So if we did the
You need
first,
2 months to get a policy approved.
so May. So May would be our deadline.
All right, and then we'll try to have some recommendations at the next meeting, because we'll want to come out of the April meeting with something for the board to consider, and then move forward in May with this, okay? This thing's trying to save battery.
That's all right. I have it on there.
Okay.
Keep that so I can get it later.
I'm just trying to get back to my agenda.
Oh.
I think you're up next, if you're going in order.
Yeah, I'm kind of going in order, right? So, elimination of enumeration position.
We actually have two enumerators right now. One, Betty Swisher, does the enumeration for Birdsboro, and Donna Malloy does the enumeration for Amity. And Union Township had someone who left, and nobody ever, we put out a request and nobody wanted to do it. We got nothing back. Now, especially with the taxes being done in-house, our tax clerk came to me and said that she felt that we could eliminate the Amity position because she is seeing everything internally. It would be a little more difficult because she's still not collecting for Birdsboro. Could it be done? Probably. Is it going to be quite as accurate? Maybe not. But she felt as though she noticed just updating records recently that a lot of what was coming in from that enumerator was duplicate, and she already had it in. So she just came to me and said, she's very comfortable with deleting that one, not quite as comfortable with deleting Birdsboro at this point.
And I believe we checked with Mr. Supers, and he said that there's nothing holding our hands. There's nothing that we need to have an enumerator. We're talking anywhere from...
In 9/10, we paid Amity $2,056.40. And
So far
this
10,
year,
11.
$1,190.40.
It's not big dollars, but it's something.
It's an enumerator.
Especially with our person coming to us saying, hey, I think I can do it
Census
and
person.
save, you know.
And I'm not
Counter.
so concerned about Birdsboro because, for example, 9/10,
800.
well, no, that was,
No.
it's $695.20. The other was for envelopes. And the other was $329.60. So
Yeah.
now not included in the Amity census is we normally give her the envelopes and
Postage.
postage. Betty takes care of her own.
Gotcha.
I mean, we reimburse her, but she only for the envelopes. I don't think she ever charges us for the postage. So,
Postage is probably expensive.
And like Julie said, with Betty still collecting the taxes, it's a little bit harder for us to do that, where for Amity and Union, we collect them, so it's a little easier.
for us to see the changes, whatever. So,
So our recommendation is to...
it's not much, but
Hey, look, if that's your recommendation, I don't see any reason to go against that.
okay.
I would support that.
Sure.
Yeah.
For Amity.
For Amity, yeah, and then I don't know whether, from a logistical standpoint, you know, you guys would have to make the call at some point down the road whether it's easier to adopt Birdsboro into the fold as well, or, you know, continue to operate with the third party in Birdsboro. Whatever works best. I mean, that decision wouldn't be a dollar decision, $300, $600.
I know.
But from a procedural one, or just an accounting
Right.
you know.
I think we're eventually hoping to move
have that
Birdsboro to the
in-
lockbox, to move it in-house, but it's
Yeah.
been a little bit of a struggle.
Okay.
She's not ready to give it up at this point, so.
It's her social hour.
Okay.
What is that, the per capita that you guys collect now? Is it, doesn't?
No, the real estate. We
Oh, you
do
collect your
real
own
estate and
in-house.
per cap
Okay.
For Amity and
for
Union.
Amity and Union.
Okay.
So I think that needs board action. on that one.
I would suggest
probably
it only
take the board,
because there was board action to
Appoint her.
appoint her as,
Yeah, so we'll bring it up tonight under the committee of the whole, and then hopefully they'll make it under the voting meeting then for the later half of the month.
okay.
Okay, so authorization to pass along fees to employees for lost checks. This seems like a slam dunk to me, but
Well, we just wanted to
We wanted
make
to
sure.
run it by this committee before we did it. We're having a lot of trouble. Our person that does bank recs is constantly on, and most of the time, if a check does not cash within 60 days, oh, I lost it. How about direct deposit? No, I don't think so.
how many checks are we doing like this? I mean,
I said, I can't believe it.
Payroll checks.
Do we actually need a policy, or is this just something procedurally we can do?
We wanted to bring it
We just wanted to
This
do
is
it.
informational.
I don't necessarily know we need approval, we just kind of wanted to run it by you
Yeah,
guys
yeah,
before
I don't
we did it.
know.
I appreciate you bringing it to our attention. It
You
seems
offer
like-
direct deposit.
We did.
Right.
I don't have a
And
problem.
I'm not sure how many of the tuition checks, maybe a handful,
Yeah.
but payroll I know is a
Payroll's
lot.
worse.
And you're asking how many checks we run, and I'm not 100% sure.
Well, I mean,
think
how many are you duplicating a year?
payroll wise,
Enough to make
You
it
get-
worth
make a
our
statement.
while to,
Yeah.
maybe it'll force them into
the
direct
same
deposit.
offenders.
The same, over and over.
I
and
think that's
over.
It's a no-brainer. So, I mean, these people obviously just lazy with their checks, and they're misplacing them, or whatever the case may be. So
So-
if you charge them a
30.
fee, they will probably either start hanging on to their checks a little bit more carefully, or they will go with a direct deposit. I mean,
Yeah, so our proposal is the $30 fee. That's what we're being charged by the bank, so we just want to pass that fee along to
Sure.
them.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cost reduction measure.
that's a revenue neutral though.
Just so you know,
Yeah.
I
Cost
mean, we have the service for the
They're
checks
looking to
that
make
just
money,
go
just don't want
out.
to waste money.
So we're not,
Good.
we are not receiving fees for any,
Then they'd accuse us of losing the check for the profit.
bounce
Yeah.
checks or anything like that.
Right.
So we just have always been with the employee like, oh, we'll take care of it. But now I think we need to pass the fee
well, I
along.
think that there's also the hidden cost of something like this. I mean, if it's a lot of checks, then someone's spending their time, even if it's just a
Exactly.
few minutes every payroll period, reprinting checks. I don't know if you're putting them in envelopes and you're mailing them. So there's those costs associated with it as well.
The
so.
reconciling the bank statements.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem. All right,
All right.
so moving on to some other ideas. Multi-year budgeting, obviously this has been a hot button for me for years. I'd really like to move forward with this. I think now more than ever we need a multi-year budget to kind of help us sort through what we're doing. I'm happy, what I was going to do was have Mike Jacobs come set something up so we could broadcast, but in this room I don't think it's the best thing for that. But maybe at the next meeting I'd like to show everybody what I did with the 4-year budget you guys worked with a few years ago. And those numbers aren't going to be accurate just because we know that we're putting things in different codes now as opposed to what we've been doing before. So it's hard to compare apples to apples, but I've sort of put this thing together and it's starting to work. I got some more work to do with it, but it'll allow us to pivot, use pivot tables to determine exactly how much you're spending in each cost category. Much easier, so you guys may find it easier to find information. If somebody asks you, well, how much do we spend on the X, Y, and Z, and then you pivot right there in 2 clicks, and there's a number. It'll be more, I think the difficult part will be actually taking our live data out of whatever system that you guys use, pushing that out into a CSV file, and then uploading it into the Excel model. And then, maybe if we're just doing that annually, I realize things change with each, education credit that or reimbursement that we do, and people dropping in and dropping out for, all kinds of different reasons. But I think from a board perspective, in terms of planning for our budgets, it would be a lot easier to have something we can work with.
Sure. I mean, with the check register, I have some stuff set up as well. We can also spend one of our sessions taking a look at that and see if that's helpful.
Or maybe you can use like support software that interfaces
That's not a problem.
between the CSV file that you're uploading.
That's what I do now. Julie sends me a CSV file, and I just have a piece of software that just uploads it into a database, and then we project it out month by month by month. You can see your vendors. What I wanted to ask you for is how difficult it would be for me to backtrack to June and get that in a CSV format and overwrite the stuff that I manually keyed in for accuracy's sake, because there are things I didn't really manually key it in. I read it in from the PDF. And sometimes it transposes numbers and letters, and
Do
it
you run
doesn't
it
do a
by
good job.
checks, or can you run it by the date for the month?
I think I can,
Could you run like June to, or July to now?
We can.
Can you do that? And then we'll just get a big dump of it, and instead
Probably.
of trying to run
yeah, I think
we
I
probably
can.
Okay.
can run it,
Yeah.
That
but
would
you
be-
just run it a month, so we can probably run a date span.
Yeah, I think I can. I'm trying to picture the screen, but I think it does give me dates. I'm actually, when I'm doing the reports for the board meeting, I'm overriding dates by putting in run
Check
checks
numbers.
through from this to this.
Right,
So,
because to keep it in line with the board, where if we just do the month to date, or from July to whatever the
Right.
last one is that Frank has.
I think I can.
Yeah. I could show that if you want at our next meeting, and show you what I've been doing with that data. Maybe that'll spark some ideas.
And you want it just from July through,
Current, or whatever the last.
Right.
one is.
Yeah, whatever the last one, I would do the last one, because you're going to be doing another one for him here.
Yeah.
so I would
Next
just
week or
do
so.
July through,
Be year to date, early July 1st.
I'm going to say February.
Yeah, I don't know
And
what the
then-
last.
Yeah, February.
Yeah, because I think my issue was, in the past where I get the CSV files from you guys, I could take that and I'd set that up as one tab in the model, right? And one sheet in the model, and then you just reference those cells in the rest of the model, away you go. But if there's a way to sort of interface that a little bit more smoothly, then...
Yeah, again, I could show you folks what it is, and if you like it, it's something that you can have and use yourself, and not, have to depend on me to give you that data, or a board member to give you that data, or transpose that data. You can do it yourself. But yeah, I'd be happy to show you, at our next meeting.
That'll work out great. Now, I guess the next question is, logistically, when is the best time to start to address? I'm willing to take on the majority of the work, but at some point I'm gonna have to sit down with you folks and figure out, okay, well, look, how does this model work for you guys? How do we make it? I want to make this so darn easy to use that anybody on the board can get in there and start playing with assumptions or see what's happening, and obviously you guys can use it as a tool going forward when in perpetuity forever. So I guess the question is, I know we're busy now with the budget, and then kind of at the year end, and then where's a good time where we can sit down and start to work on this as a project, or is it better to do it a little bit at a time?
I think it's better to try to do a little bit at a time, because really, I know it's cliche when we say there's not a good time, because we go right from budgeting to audit, right back into budgeting again. So I think maybe a little bit at a time. Now, my question is, I'm assuming you would want the most up-to-date budget, which we won't have obviously until June. Or are you working with other, I'm not sure.
I'm not so concerned about the data.
Okay.
I'm structurally working on the model
Gotcha.
to make sure that works. And, so what I do is I took all our contractual obligations and I set that up in a model so that, the annual increases are automatic. And then you would just, if we negotiate another contract, for example, you go to the yellow highlighted cells and say, well, we changed these things. So instead of 4%, it's 2%. Instead of 3%, it's this. Instead of whatever, it's whatever. Instead of step being 15, or reimbursement being $3,500, it's $3,750. and that sort of thing. So the idea is you have one assumption page, you go through, you change all those data, and then it ripples through the model, and then you can just take a look at where the results
If you
are.
just take your
So-
contracted budget of 65% of your budget, somewhere around that number, and just start with modeling that simple thing alone, that's
Yeah.
a huge help there.
Yeah.
To say, listen, in 2014, when we negotiated another contract here, let's plug in what it'll look like 5 years after 2014 and see how bad of a shape it is. So just for that alone is a huge help.
Yeah.
Just thinking this month is no good, and I know Julie and I actually are both out, have vacations in April. Could we start May?
Yeah,
Like
I think
beginning,
May's
would
fine,
you
sure.
be able to like
Yeah, I'll set some
pick
time
a day or
aside.
something, and then Julie and I can make sure our calendars are clear and we can just
Yeah.
at least start looking at it?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to come in and monopolize your time, so if
No,
something,
no,
we
no.
come in for an hour or two
Yeah.
and just kind
I
of go
think-
through it, and you guys give me some feedback, I can go change it, come back in another week
Personally,
or
I
2
think
weeks.
doing it like that, an hour here and there, is better than just trying to, I think even for you,
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
for
for me,
your
absolutely.
time as
Is
well.
it something we could spend a little bit of time on?
We can do it here
this
at
meeting,
meetings.
because I'd like to
Yeah.
see it
Yeah, absolutely.
participate too.
You know, quite frankly, unless
'Cause
there's a lot of other big things on the agenda,
Yeah.
I mean, this would be. a
That's
good
exactly
time
what I was
to
gonna say.
work
There's not
Okay.
always gonna be stuff really that we even have to bring to you guys.
on it. Right,
I think that's fine.
okay. Great, all right, so we'll plan on May, and for the Finance Committee meeting in May, we'll kick off there.
Okay,
And
that's
then I'll
fine.
figure out another time to stop in later in the month
That works.
and sit down with you guys.
I don't know that I did, but that's okay.
We had a couple
We got the spreadsheet, but we didn't get
It would seem to me
Yeah.
that a tool like this, in answering your question of when you want it done,
We'll go from the top.
I think what you want to use it for should define when you want it done.
Well, we're gonna wanna use it next year when we're talking about.
Then I would say our deadline is like November when we start budget.
For a working model.
However,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If that's the purpose of a multi-year budget, which I agree with.
But anything can come up between now and then.
No, I understand-
For
I
example,
understand that.
I did a separate one, which was just our capital
Right.
requirements, if you remember, we were having the discussion
Right. Mm-hmm.
about the stadium. So, you know, those needs change. Now we got issues with the high school roof.
Right.
You know, the seams are coming apart sooner
Right.
than we had anticipated. So, you know, that's a $700,000 item that we
Right.
may have to address sooner than later. So I just want to make sure that, you know, I can get the working parts of this together as quickly as possible.
Right.
And then we can kind of, you know, get it rolling. All right, so debt balance and debt service, I just kind of wanted to make sure that everybody was sort of aware, I think for a long time, the board, just, never mind, I've got this.
I don't need it, that's what I'm saying. I can-
Yes.
So, This is just a schedule of debt service for the school, that the school district currently has. I just wanted to, A, with the Finance Committee, and then maybe B, you know, pushing it out to the board at large, just so everybody understands how much money we've got out there and how long we have this commitment. It's a long time, it's generational. And, you know, it is what it is, and I think we just need to be aware of what the horizons are for maybe looking for ways that we have an opportunity to refinance. There are certain deadlines there where we can do that. I think the closest one's 6 years out at this point. So, but, you know, there's always opportunities out there. So I just think we need to be cognizant of what we have out there. And when we're talking about programs or adding things or taking things away, there's a lot of money that we currently have hanging over our heads for a long, long, long time. So this is more informational, just making sure the board members are aware of it, and not really anything else. I mean, our debt service, I haven't noted here for debt service other than what I mentioned earlier, which is I think it starts to spike over the next 2 or 3 years and then comes back down again. Not a huge variation, but, you know,
Enough
at this
right
point,
now.
a couple $100,000 is a serious amount of money for us. So,
Keeping the banks in business.
yeah. Any comments from anybody on that?
No, just getting used to looking at the numbers.
Well, the good news is, about a year ago, it was $104 million. So
We're getting somewhere?
now it's 95.
Good job.
Well, when you're paying $7 million a year towards debt service, you're bound to see a
Yeah.
reduction
Yeah.
along the way. Okay, and the last
Not
one.
credit cards, right? You wouldn't.
Exactly. exactly. And then the last issue I had was referendum. So one of the issues was, in order to even do a referendum, we kind of needed a balanced budget. And then from a balanced budget, be able to say, okay, well, look, this is how much of the budget is going to be covered by a referendum. So these types of programs or whatever are going to be in addition to. We don't have a balanced budget because the board hasn't quite gotten there yet. So it doesn't seem to me like it really makes a whole lot of sense to have a recommendation to the board to actually go forward with a referendum. That's my personal opinion. Dr. Otto, you would like to comment on?
I think you've pretty much summed it all, summed it up. I think the having it balanced first, obviously, we technically did that with the preliminary budget, but that's also precluding use of fund balance, use of a certain amount of tax revenue, and decisions that really the board hasn't, in my opinion, really had ample time and fair time to even make. The governor has not, really made, we didn't get a commitment from the governor until the 8th of March, so that really didn't give, I don't think just this is unique to Daniel Boone. I think it's unique. I think it's affecting all school districts where they didn't really have the chance to deliberate, and know what their funding would be from the state. So it really put everybody in kind of a precarious position in terms of seeking referendum. And from a practical standpoint, I don't think the taxpayers are in the mood to.
Well, that's the kind of way I looked at it. We have $2.5 million sitting in our fund balance. I don't think most people recognize that that's working capital. Two, if we're looking at, the Act 1 index and special exceptions, you have the ability of raising taxes, 2.4 mils.
So far.
Which is an 8.5% increase in taxes. Why someone would sit there and say, and vote to increase their taxes
10.5.
2 or 3 or 4% beyond that, I think is, especially when we're sitting on a fund balance.
We need to be able to quote that number in the fund balance, though, that is above and beyond that date in August or whenever it dips down when you're fully using that 2.1 million or whatever it is. What's that amount in there? Because that's the amount that really we need to make sure people understand. There's 2.5 million in there, but 2.1 is going to get used up, and we only got 400,000 left or whatever that is.
Well, not just that, but I don't think next year's going to be any better, and your expenses are going to go up 4% again.
Right.
More than 4%.
So.
The fund balance is a placeholder.
Right.
It's a number that's there on paper. It's a number on paper, but you really shouldn't fool with it.
I don't.
But at the
how much
same time-
discussion we've had out, in the full board. I haven't been in. This is my first meeting here, but how deep did you dive into getting like a tax anticipation loan? And
Last
things
year
of that
when we
nature?
brought up the tax revenue anticipation notes, I don't even think we got the full cost of what those would be. It was like 2 to 3% in interest, and but there's attorney's fees and there's some other costs associated with setting up those things. I think it's probably de minimis,
But that analysis really
but I don't think
wasn't
that
done.
analysis wasn't completed last year.
I
was it?
know I did it. I did the analysis that I could, and then you guys had asked Brian Subers to look at it, but I
Yeah, I
don't
don't think we
believe
got any
he
information back.
ever.
That kind of died on the vine.
Fine, yeah. I did as far as I could go with it.
I was looking at my notes on that just because I knew that question would come up, and all I had on here was 2 to 3% in rates, and then there was legal fees, an investment banker, and terms, where we didn't really get any numbers for those things. So, in terms of just the transactional costs, and then so I guess the question would be, well, what would it cost to borrow $2.1 million for 6 weeks or 7 weeks? And I don't know what those.
So it's not doable for us, and I know I'm probably oversimplifying this, I apologize, but
The referendum or a transit?
this whole issue that we have, we need to make a payment in July to pay our debt service to
I
ABC
think we have
Bank.
2 payments.
Oh, well,
One in
I'm just
July,
giving
one
you
at the
an
beginning of
example.
August, yeah.
So to ABC Bank or whatever in July, and we know if we go out and get a trans loan, it may be 3% of that money. Could we talk to the bank and say, listen, instead of July, can we make the payment in August and pay you a percentage less than what it would cost for us to have the trans loan?
Well, I had asked that
Pay them
last
more,
year.
but less
What you're
than-
asking is if we can change our debt service payments.
Or
We
just
can't.
say for this year,
Yeah, we
can we
can't.
pay it a month late and pay you a
We
fee?
can't.
You can't, so that's you have a whole year, we could be spending money aside during the whole year for that debt payment that's due, right? So we could actually put the money aside today for that debt payment that's due in July. You know, but you can't change it.
As far as you.
Yeah, and so that was the whole concept of, well, you know, the timing of our debt service payments as opposed to when our cash flows come in is off. And if we could somehow either change when we make the payments, you know, with our bondholders, that'd be great, but we can't do that. So the next option was, can you pre-fund it 1 year so that you're ahead, right? So you make that payment.
Like a double payment.
Yeah, you'll make a double payment, right, 1 year, and then you're ahead of it. And then every year, then you don't have to have that working capital because it's already been set aside or paid.
Well, we
And so
did.
into
That's why I
their,
wanna
there's
read this to them.
the bondholders have a reserve account.
But
We'll
it
make,
continues
actually making the debt
6
service
weeks,
payments
but
into the
in the
reserve
current
account. And from
environment,
there, it
unless
goes
we
to the
absolutely
bondholders.
need it, it's
And
not-
so,
It doesn't make sense.
you know, we're making those debt payments literally
Well,
as they're
I mean,
due,
that's
as
up
opposed
to
to
them.
making them ahead of time and funding.
It's that same theory. Remember when you used to get a job as a kid and you'd wait 4 weeks to get your first pay?
paycheck, yeah.
And then when you'd leave, you'd get one and you say, hey, I didn't work for this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally, we're doing the wire transfers the day of or the day before, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
The only thing I'm throwing out there is, and I know it's hard because we don't have the balanced budget, so I know for the referendum, you gotta have what you're putting it out there for. My only thought was, I don't know that I'd feel comfortable raising the taxes as much as you need to with a referendum, and I don't really anticipate that people would vote for the referendum, but I was just wondering if it's worth putting it out there. You know, we have 300 people showing up at a meeting every month telling us what we can't cut, we can't cut, we can't cut. Are they willing to pay for it? If they're willing to pay for it, we don't have to cut it. But I don't know that they're, I don't anticipate that they are, but is it worth throwing the question out there? And giving them the opportunity. But the problem is we don't know what
We have to
we're asking them to
quantify
pay
it.
for.
Yeah, we have to quantify it like
Right.
today. We have until what, the 20?
Friday,
Till
the question
Friday.
has to be
Eight,
out.
yeah, right.
Yeah,
So
18.
we have between now and
Between
Friday.
now and Friday.
Yeah, to say, okay, well, look, this is how we're going to balance the budget, and then we're going to,
Well, in all
Increase
fairness,
taxes
the
to
way the
max.
referendum works, in prior years, when the new governor, last year, we knew in February what our money was. We would have had time to deliberate it. We
Well-
had literally 10 days, we've known how much money we can expect.
And that is because he is a new governor, he's allowed that extra
Right.
time to
The referendum system is a little imperfect.
get his budget
Well, it's
together.
still a budget.
Well, that's
system,
true.
You know, it's.
And we're still on the same time schedule, so
Just going back to the train here, when I did contact RBC, they said the process can take up to 6 weeks. And in the current interest rate environment, their opinion was that it didn't make sense to do a train unless we absolutely needed the funds because of the current borrowing rates being 2 to 3%.
yeah, I thought we did follow through
And then
all the way.
I did send
Yeah.
Brian this information, but I never heard back
Right.
from him. This was back in August when I sent this to him.
I mean, I think it
Because
pushed
we were
him to
trying to
shove,
look,
and we had no other resource, and we had,
We have
then
to, yeah.
we have to
I mean,
spend
we
down the
have to
fund
know what
balance
he
and
says.
then use a trans loan, and then you have to work your way out of using that every year until
I'd say,
you,
but you're probably looking at using it for.
we may end up using it
multiple
next
years.
year's. We may end up using some fund balance this year. Depends on how we negotiate everything else going forward, so.
Well, if we don't have a referendum and we don't have the money, what are we cutting to balance the budget?
You know, you're talking about tax
I guess we got
increase.
3 more months to figure that one out.
That is the $49 million question.
That is the $49 million question.
Actually, we'd want to know that by May,
Oh, yeah.
when you post your preliminary final.
your proposed final, I have to post the end of, like, 30 days before the final. So I
We
have to
basically
post
have
it
till
by May
about
20.
Memorial Day to get it figured out.
Hopefully before that, thanks.
Just throwing it out
Just
there.
give me a day or two.
Let me just get out
Have
my
a day or two.
checkbook and I'll take care of the whole thing.
That'd be nice.
If I could.
So a good 8 weeks of boot camp coming.
Okay. Any other comments on that item?
Well, I guess, yeah, you really can't. I mean,
I don't think you're going to see anybody this year do this. I think that terrain may change next year.
Yeah, and that was the consensus. I had emailed my contacts at PASBO, and they said they didn't know anyone going out to referendum this year. Not that that doesn't mean that.
And there was so far, only one
Everybody's faced
successful
the same problem. No one has
referendum,
known
and that
their
was
state
for a
funding until last
construction
Tuesday.
project.
Yeah.
Right.
So with that
So-
big X,
Yeah.
that invariable or variable, whichever one you want to call it, nobody has the time to scramble to get, everybody's under the same election rules to get something
Well,
posted.
like they've been saying, we've been looking at old numbers, but some people have been looking at.
I actually think that we
even
are
higher numbers.
way ahead of the curve in terms of the kind of discussions we have had about specific line items in the budget. Others have just started to have that conversation, I can guarantee you.
No, I agree.
I mean, I know it for a fact.
Yeah, I don't, but I'm pretty sure, because it's,
I think some might be close to where we are. I think some have started the conversation, but based on some of the comments some of the superintendents have made in the paper, oh, we didn't realize ABG wasn't going to be there. Oh, my word, we wiped ABG out back in December. We said, forget
As
it.
hard as it was for us to come out with the revenue numbers we came out with, I really feel good about
they were
where we came
conservative.
in.
We were
I
both
mean,
very pleased
Not
by
because I've been reading and you see people saying, oh, now we have 200,000 and now we don't know what we're going to do, or we have this amount, and it's like, well, at least we kind of started out
We've been
hard.
saying now we don't know what we're going to do for 2 months.
Well,
We kind of felt alone after the one
I think-
meeting.
And I'm not knocking it. I think, again,
no.
I think you did a great job. But next year, I think you give them, you do even more, and you say, here's the budget balanced. And now you guys figure out what you want to add back in that you don't like. But here it is. Start out with the balanced budget, as ugly as it is, because we keep getting uglier and uglier and uglier as you find more cuts. I think we start out with the ugliest thing there is. Right off the bat, we're balanced. Here it is. Here's how to balance the school's budget, and it's horrible.
That will
And now
require-
you start working your way back into,
And well, that makes it easier to go to referendum too.
and
Yeah.
well, at least you know more.
Right.
You know sooner.
And I think if you do the research on referendums, it's very much a political and marketing process that requires you to dedicate a lot of time to, it's almost like running a political campaign.
Yeah.
I talked to superintendent from Brandywine, is a former New York superintendent, and he said basically the superintendent's job in referendum states becomes worrying about what your referendum question is going to be every year and backing up most of your time to make sure it gets passed to get the things that you want.
Some
So
of
you
these
go out there with
schools
one,
outstate.
I'm not really familiar with the process. You
Bring
go
in
out
a
there, when you go
PR
out for
person.
referendum, with one
Hire a PR
One chunk
person
and one
to do
number.
it.
that encompases all these
Yeah.
things that would get added back.
Right,
Yeah.
in
You
Pennsylvania.
don't do it in separate.
Let's say, for example, we were going to pass a referendum to,
I think you would say increase taxes a certain percentage.
increase
above.
taxes a certain
then-
percent.
Would come
And
back.
these are the things that these
But
taxes are
then-
going to pay for.
Your question is this, and then they ask you to do like a layman's terms that you can have at the ballot with you, and then you would say, okay, if you don't vote for this, we're going half day kindergarten.
Not to bring
We're
up a
having-
sore, right, say we
we're
wanted
having no
to,
athletic program.
say we
And then-
had no,
But it's all or nothing. It's all these
It's
things
not like
will
you can,
happen
it's
or
not
not
like you can
happen.
pick and choose.
Right.
Right, it's
if the referendum fails,
All these things are.
all
gonna
those
go,
things go.
Right.
Or
which is
you
why
have
it
to
has
find
be
another way to
balanced in
pay
the
for
first
them.
place.
Right. Okay.
And so you have to be careful, I think, as a board, that it's not some sort of political weapon, you know what I mean? Because
Right.
you could sit there and say, well, we're going to pick the favorite things,
Yeah,
and
we're
those are
gonna
the
pick
first
football
things that
and
get cut.
band and
So
volleyball.
either vote for our referendum, or,
You lose all these great
you
things.
lose all the great things first, and then, that's, I think, as a board, we'd have to have the discipline not to do something
Mhm.
like that. But that's takes a lot of political will.
And the research that I've seen and the word that I've heard about referendums is it takes easy 2, maybe sometimes 3 years for the public to understand that they lost things, and then people start to come out and vote them back in. But it's a long, painful
Well,
process.
that's Another reason why I was, if we had more
But
time,
that's,
I think it's.
but my point is,
A year to start.
my point is,
Yeah.
right,
Referendum, there's legal
Oh, yeah.
fees that are involved.
my point is you have to mobilize support for what you want. And the school district is put in the place of saying, hey, we really need this. We want to put on school plays every year, so come and vote for our referendum so we can continue to do that. If you don't, there won't be any more school plays. And people rally around that. You do a good political campaign and marketing campaign, advertisement, and people come out to the polls and either vote for it or vote against it. The only referendum that we've had recently in Berks County was when Wyomissing wanted to pass a referendum to build a new elementary school in Wyomissing, which is considered kind of one of the more affluent communities in Berks County. 87-3 or something like that, it got voted down percentage-wise. So that was for something that, you know.
I do know one of my employees, they live in Boyertown, and they got a letter within the last couple days that said, due to the budget, the state budget, we now have a $4.5 million shortage, and these are all the things that we're looking at cutting. And like family,
Look it
consumer
out.
science, tech ed,
They
business
must have
ed,
just
world
sent that to
language,
the
electives, bigger
parents.
class sizes, arts, transportation,
It's
school
coming.
enrollment, athletics,
I predicted it.
clerical, and they got that within the last couple of days.
That's
So,
not a bad thing for us to do, actually. It's not a bad idea from a board perspective to put the list out there and maybe mail it out or email it to people so they have a better sense of what's going on, what to talk about that.
which is, if you look at the list, it's pretty much everything. It's everything we've talked about and more, but,
Yeah.
it's everything. Everything's on the table.
Okay. Any comments from the public? All four of you? None? Okay. Did everybody sign that little sheet that we passed around? Okay, great, thank you. Well, if that's it, thank you all for coming.
Great. This was my first meeting, so if there's anything I can do to help, just let me know. Be happy to. Thanks, Frank.
Who's the keeper of it?
Let me have that, because I got to type up minutes.